Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to palette week day 2, assuming that I'm posting things in order that I plan to as I prep, but we know that most likely it's not going to happen perfectly how I envision. So hopefully this is day 2. If not, welcome back to palette week. Happy palette week, where every single day for 7 days straight I am posting some sort of palette themed content, and I'm very excited for today's video because do y'all remember a few years ago, I think it was Jen Loves Reviews who started this like video concept where she did, I think it was 20 best products from 20 different brands in under 20 minutes. Well, we're doing a little spin off of that, and we're gonna do 20 best palettes from 20 different brands in hopefully under 20 minutes today. And I'm super excited for it. Some of these decisions were quite difficult. And I will say I have done like if I can only choose one from a brand on my channel. And some of my answers are a little bit different just because I feel like maybe I chose something because I wanted to keep like the color story in my collection, but it wouldn't be like my tippity top favorite. And I did also try to include in this video palettes that, I tried to include brands that I had like multiple palettes from. There's just a few in here sprinkled in because I didn't realize, I thought I had more palette brands in my collection. More brands? What am I trying to say? I didn't have like a super amount of brands to choose from. Am I making any sense? Anyway, you guys, we're talking about 20 amazing eyeshadow palettes today. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project planning content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's get into the video. Okay, you guys, this is gonna be in no particular order other than like the order that things are sitting in front of me. If I can, I'm gonna see if I can find like a little timer to put in the, like, if I can. Editing Steph will try, but she is not the best with technology. Just to like put a timer to like add a little bit more fun to this. But let's jump right into it. So up first I have Too Faced, and I don't have a ton of Too Faced palettes left in my collection, but throughout the years I've tried a number of Too Faced palettes, and to date the best palette I think that Too Faced has come out with, in my opinion, is the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette, which is one that they launched this year. And I just absolutely fell in love with this palette. I love the color story. I love the quality. There is such a range of different textures amongst the metallic and foiled shades in this palette. And I feel like there's a decent range of color, especially considering some of the palettes that like Too Faced has come out with. I don't know, I did not have issues with any of the shades in this palette. I had so much fun creating looks with this palette. And so from Too Faced, I think the Too Faced Italian Spritz would be my number 1. From ABH, I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking I'm gonna tell you it's the ABH Jackie palette, but I'm actually going with the ABH Sultry palette. And the reason being is because I love the ABH Jackie palette, but I have like my go-to looks, my go-to shades in that palette. And when I'm thinking about like a palette as a whole and like usable for like the most amount of people, it's ABH Sultry in my mind. Just because even for me, I don't want to open this up because I don't want to spoil anything for my Pan That palette, but I get the most use out of the most amount of shades in this palette when comparing to all my other ABH palettes that I have used in the past. Loved the color story, and I just think that this one is the best that ABH has ever done. From Tarte, I also don't own that many Tarte palettes anymore. In fact, I may own just the one that I'm talking about, but I loved this palette so much that I actually went out and repurchased this palette. I thought it was like my palette collection was missing it. So it's the Tartelette in Bloom palette. I just love this palette, especially for just like your everyday, like just comfort, go-to, easy reach. You don't have to think about it. You can use it for every day. You can use it for going out. You can really like, this palette is really flexible in that it can really take you from day to night. It's really easy to travel with. You have a nice mirror. It's just overall such a solid palette, and just such a staple to really, I think, anyone's collection. So from Tarte, it would be the Tartelette in Bloom. All right, the next two are the 2 brands that I only own 2 palettes from. So like, take it with a grain of salt. They also only own 2 palettes in their line. But from Persona, we all know that I'm gonna say Persona Identity. One, Such a good palette. I have talked about this palette so much on my channel throughout the years, but truly it's just such a solid, again, staple. Can you tell I have a type when it comes to like everyday color stories? I love that you have a mix of cool tones with like a hint of warm, and the shimmer metallic foiled shades are just unlike any other formula I have used. They are so smooth on the eyelids. They just look so beautiful. I just love them. So from Persona, it would be Persona Identity 1. And then from Patrick Ta, for me, it's the Major Dimension 1. And actually, I think Patrick Ta recently released the matte palette, so he has 3 palettes now. But it's the perfect warm brown palette, in my opinion. Like, truly, like, when I'm thinking of like top warm brown palettes, warm brown color stories, I love this palette. I love the selection of the matte shades. They blend so easily. I don't have any issues blending. I love the addition of the cream shades in this palette. I've actually gotten quite a bit of use out of it, which I was not expecting. And then again, you have a good range of tones and textures amongst the metallic and shimmer shades. So it's really flexible, and again, can kind of take you from a more subtle look to something that's like really high shine, really intense. And I am just a really big fan of the Major Dimension 1 from Patrick Ta. From Artist Couture, this should also come as no surprise if you've been watching my channel for any length of time. It's the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette, not Supreme Bronze. It's a solid color story. I like that you have the pop of green, because y'all know I love a green, but I just like the selection of the shades in here. The mattes are so easy to work with, so easy to blend, more buildable, kind of giving like Viseart vibes, like not uber pigmented off the bat, which definitely works better for the way that I do my makeup, and just being a little bit more sloppy, not having the best blending skills. It just works for me. The metallics or the shimmer shades are more of like a satin metallic, not a satin metallic, but they're not gonna be the most intense foiled glitter, foiled from space sort of shade. But that really works for me when I'm thinking of day-to-day use. And this is really a palette that gets so much use like outside of my channel and like day-to-day. I brought this traveling with me on, I literally think, every work trip I have gone on since owning this. So for me, Artist Couture Supreme Nudes is the Supreme palette from the Artist Couture line. Okay, Rowan. I love the Rowan quads so much. There's only one that I don't own, but for me, I think the 1111 is the best. I just love the color story. I love this chunky pink shade. I think it is so beautiful and so intense and so textured on the lids, kind of giving like a little bit of like editorial vibes, but you can really like make it work for every day as well. It's just such a unique formula, such a unique, I love the palette so much. I love the quad so much. That's not to say I don't like any of the other Rowan quads. I don't really think you can go wrong. Just pick a color story suited to you. But I think that the 1111 is the most unique, and I get so much use out of all of the shades. This is one that I've also repurchased because my other one, my daughter kind of destroyed. So I loved this one so much I had to repurchase it. And it's so good. Okay, from Kaleidos, I really struggled deciding. Kaleidos just has such a great formula, and it really depends on like, you know, what vibe you're going for color story. I love the Kaleidos. I recently finished the Kaleidos Escape Pod in my Project Level Up, so I'm like super familiar with that palette now. Love that color story, especially if you are looking to play around with color. I also love the Kaleidos collab with Angelica, but I landed on this one. This is the Kaleidos Futurism 7 Sashimi City. I just think for, again, every day, and I know like sometimes we're not going for like an everyday look stuff, every shade in this palette, all 6 shades are just so functional in my mind, and I just absolutely adore this palette. I do think maybe we could have swapped out one of these browns. Like, I feel like maybe they're similar enough. We could have swapped one of them out for a different shade, especially considering there's only 6 shades in this palette. But the mattes, they blend so nice. And these 2 like lid topper shades are so sparkly and beautiful on the eyes. Like, this is such an amazing palette. I couldn't not select that one for the top. All right, next up we have Sigma. I like Sigma's formula, but I'm not like die hard over it like I feel like some people are. Like, I don't feel like they have the best eyeshadow formula in my opinion. Like, it's so. Sometimes I struggle to get their mattes to work for me, and sometimes their shimmer metallic formula can really be hit or miss for me. But I truly think the Sigma Corda Rosa overall was like it just worked. Like overall, every shade in here I didn't have any issues with. The only one I can think is maybe a little bit patchy is this dark brown shade, but with a little blending, like it works just fine. This is such a beautiful coral orangey palette. I love reaching for this in the summertime. I love all of the shimmers. I think they're so beautiful. And again, you kind of have a good mix. Like you have these metallic sparklies, but then you also have some that are more of like a satin finish as well. And I just think that adds for a nice variety within a palette. And I really do recommend the Sigma Corte Rosa. I feel like we're doing decent on time. That makes me so happy. Okay. All the rest I'm like, okay, let's go with Natasha Denona. I probably will at the end of the year do a Natasha Denona ranking video. And I will say I did not include the Yucca palette or the I Need a Nude in my selection. Like I didn't count those as like, I thought about this as if I never own those because I haven't finished testing those out. So I didn't want to like pick one of those when like I haven't tested every shade and I don't know for sure. So from Natasha Denona, I decided to go with the gold palette. Recently, I've been using the Biba a lot as well, and I forgot how much or like how good Natasha Denona Biba is, but I just think the gold palette is so unique, and it's really funny for me to say that because I remember seeing the pictures when this first was launching and I was like, every single matte brown shade looks exactly the same. But when you see this in person, there's truly like no shade is alike. Like the two closest, like this shade is kind of similar, but still so different from this shade. And then these two, I guess you could argue are like kind of similar, but still so different. And I love that it is like a neutral brown palette, but then you have these pops of both green and blue. And I just think it's such an interesting take on a neutral palette, such good quality, and truly just an all around amazing palette. I know you can't get this anymore, so I'm sorry to choose this one, but I mean, this is just like truly the best. I also struggled with Odin's Eye because I love like so many of their palettes, and really it's just gonna come down to like what color story works best for you. But I decided to go with the Merry Christmas palette, and the reason I went with Merry Christmas is there are some Odin's Eye palettes that like there are a few shades in the palette that just don't work perfectly for me. This one, every single shade performed absolutely beautifully, and I love the just variety of colors. I feel like there's quite a bit of variety amongst the like metallic special shades in this palette, and it's just like looking at this like makes my mouth water and salivate. Like I love it so much. I also know you can't get this one anymore, but I wanted to go with truly, even if it was limited edition, I wanted to go with my true tippity top, like top for all 20 of these brands. Okay, thank you guys. If you've been watching me for any length of time, this next one may also come as a bit of a curveball, but for Pat McGrath, I was going back and forth on Bronze Seduction, and then I ultimately landed on, I think their best for me, and I haven't tried every single one, but the best I've tried I think would be Moonlit Seduction. And the reason I selected this one is because I have my like go-to shades in Bronze Seduction. Like I love reaching for that palette for my go-to shades, but I feel like there's more go-to shades within Moonlit Seduction, and I feel like cohesively this makes more sense as a whole. I absolutely love every single shimmer, metallic, sparkly, special shade in this palette. My least favorite, and it's not even like I don't like it, but I like it, but if I had to choose a least favorite sparkly metallic shade in this palette, it would be this one right here. They're just so special, so sparkly, and so unique, and just beautiful on the lids. If you've had your eye on this, we all know Pat McGrath always has sales going on. I highly recommend waiting for a sale but purchasing this. If you like a sparkly, like Lauren May Beauty level sparkly lid, it's just chef's kiss. All right, from NARS, we all know NARS palettes are always limited edition, so again, I'm sorry. We all knew I was gonna choose the NARS Summer Solstice palette, right? It was my first NARS palette. Press play to what Steph always says about this. I know I sound like a broken record. My first NARS palette, so beautiful, made me fall in love with NARS. Absolutely love. I have this lid topper shade actually as my inner corner right now. I love that shade as an inner corner highlight. I know there's only 2 matte shades in this palette, but I still find this to be a really functional palette and just an easy reach, especially in summer when I'm reaching for shades like this. I love this palette so much. You truly can't go wrong. Highly recommend NARS formula. There's been a few NARS palettes that have been duds for me, but overall I really enjoy them as a brand. Okay, Glamlight was hard, but I think the best Glamlight palette I've tried is definitely the Ice Cream Dream palette. Just thinking through like colorful matte shades, these are all so beautiful on the lids. I don't have any issues with them being patchy. I don't have any issues blending, and it's just so solid. I love Glamlight's shimmer formula. I actually have this Glamlight Scooby-Doo palette on today, Scooby-Doo 2. I love their shimmer metallic formula. It's just really unique. The texture is really unique. It goes on really beautifully with a finger, and it's just like this buttery textured yet smooth metallic, and they have such a good formula. I really enjoy every Glamlight palette I've tried, but I had to select this one because for a colorful formula, like they knocked it out of the park with this. All right, for Alter Ego, I knew my camera battery was gonna die. It annoys me so much. Okay, for Alter Ego, I went with Artemist, and there's a couple reasons. First of all, you're getting so many shades. I love the color story of this one, but in terms of quality, you get a huge mirror, and this definitely has some weight to it. Like it feels like a high-end palette, and I definitely feel like they've like gone down a little bit in their quality in terms of packaging. Like I like how this feels in the hand. It's weighty, it's beautiful, it just feels really nice and luxe. I've had no issues with the formula in this palette. There are quite a few cream to matte shades, but I actually enjoy using their cream to matte. They have a really great metallic formula. I don't have the dupe palette to this, so I can't necessarily compare the two side by side, but for this color story, I think every shade really does work, and this is my favorite and the best I've tried from Alter Ego. For ColourPop, I had to do it, you guys. I know you can't get this anymore, but ColourPop Limoncello, in my opinion, is the best color story they've come out with. I love the variety, but like also not variety. I love the pop of blue. I love that you have these three, like the matte yellow, the shimmery yellow or the metallic yellow, and then the metallic green. But then you also have like all the neutral browns. I have taken this traveling with me since I've owned this as well. This has never not come traveling with me, and it's like that perfect ColourPop formula. Like sometimes it can be really hit or miss, but sometimes ColourPop's mattes can be kind of dusty and just like don't blend the best. That is not the case with these. These are buttery, they're pigmented yet buildable, and I just cannot recommend this palette. I don't know if again, I know you can't get it, but from ColourPop, this would definitely be my top palette I've tried from them. Okay, you guys, if I moved a bit, it's because I had to switch my camera battery out. We only have 4 palettes left to go. Huda Beauty. This was another really difficult one, and I think it's because I've tried so many Huda Beauty palettes, so I was considering all Huda Beauty palettes that I've tried. I think the best, and it was hard for me not to choose Mercury Retrograde, I think just because that one holds like this sentimental value in my mind, but I went with Huda Rose Quartz. I just find this color story to be incredibly unique, and when I say that, I'm talking about like the ethereal shimmers in this palette. I just think it's so beautiful. You get a really nice variety again of tones and textures, which you usually do, especially in the larger Huda palettes, but I just think that these are absolutely stunning. Like the metallics, shimmers, special shades in this palette are just stunning and really unique in my opinion. I find this color story to be pretty unique throughout my collection as a whole, and this would be my top Huda palette. From Melt Cosmetics, I've tried quite a few from Melt, and really a palette that like just encompasses the brand as a whole in my opinion is the Melt Gemini. Now I will start off by saying I feel like Melt has a more difficult formula in general to work with. I find their mattes just take a little bit more finessing, a little bit more time to work with, and I do really enjoy the Melt Rust palette as well, but I went with Gemini because I love that you have the grungy greens as well as like the grungy kind of rusty tones. You really get like the two sides of this palette, and I just think it's such a unique color story to my collection, as well as the artwork. My favorite artwork that they've done. So Melt Gemini would be my top Melt palette. And then the final two are both indie brands I haven't tried the most from, but these are my top palettes. So from Adept, I have not yet finished testing the Minka palette, which I feel like could be a tippity top favorite, but I'm going with the Ninhydrin. I was between this and the Heather Austin palette, but I went with this one because there's more variety in the colors that you're getting in this palette. I freaking love this palette. I actually have the shade AC, is it ACI 23 or AC 123? I'm not sure. ACI 23. I have this on my nails right now. I wore this palette last week for the Vikings home opener game. I just stayed at home for the game, but I still wore my Vikings makeup. And I really want to play around. I haven't yet tried this shade right here, so I haven't 100% finished testing this palette, but I just love the variety, love the formula, truly adept. If you are wanting to like dabble in color, but like you like to do neutral makeup, you want to add like a pop of color, I think picking up one of these adept palettes and just like doing a neutral look but popping one of these shades on your lids can really just like allow you to kind of play around with color without being too complicated. Love this palette, but I really love all of my adept palettes. And then we're gonna end it with Glaminatrix. I have been loving Glaminatrix as a brand. I think they come up with really interesting and unique color stories. They have a really great formula. My favorite that I've tried from the brand, it's like a recent love, and I think this might be my new top favorite palette in my collection. It's the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. It is so beautiful, and I've talked about this palette I feel like quite a bit on my channel recently, so again, not to sound like a broken record, but I love the matte formula because it is definitely more buildable and not so pigmented right off the bat, which sometimes I feel like with indie shadows it's just like so pigmented right off the bat because that's like what indie shadows I feel like are known for. But I love the variety of tones as well, like no shade, no matte shade or shimmer shade really is like overlapping, and I just think there's such a unique variety. And then the metallic formula is like the smoothest yet most intense molten metallic beautifulness on your eyes that like I can even describe. It's such a freaking phenomenal palette. I love it so much. And let me tell you, I've also tried the Nocturnal palette, and I'm currently testing the Sugar and Spice. So like there's some good options out there, but like I think this is my new favorite palette in my collection. I don't know if they're gonna restock this palette as a whole. I know that they were also selling the single shadow, like a bundle of the single shadows, which I believe is currently sold out, but like if they restock that, I like could not recommend enough. But after that, you guys, those are all 20 palettes and the 20 best palettes from 20 different brands throughout my collection. I would love to know in the comments below what are some of your favorite palettes from different brands. Of course, there goes my fan. I had my heat on this morning because I was cold, and now I'm like turning my air on because I'm hot. It looks like it's gonna rain, and I kind of want it to, but I also want to go for a walk, and I'm rambling. I'm gonna go eat some tacos. That's what's on the agenda next. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel, as you guys always do, for supporting Palette Week. Leave your feedback down below. What palette videos do you want to see me film next? There will be one more Palette Week before the end of the year, so let a girl know what you want to see. Other than that, I appreciate you guys more than you know, and I will catch you in tomorrow's palette video. Bye.